Hi there, welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Hello, leader. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Fierce Factor podcast. You are here for episode 134, and today we're going to talk about managing entrepreneurial stress. If you're feeling stressed the F out, first of all, join the club. But for real, you are in the right place today. I am on the heels of an insanely stressful week, and let me tell you, I had to coach myself off a ledge to make it to today's podcast. I will say it's quite rare that I get to that point, but I am human, and lucky for me, I have the tools to manage my way out. So inspired by my week of craziness, I figured I would talk with you today about your relationship with stress and why feeling like you're on the verge of burnout may actually be a good thing. This may be the moment, leader, that you make the decision to get out of chronic stress and take your freedom back once and for all. I remember a few years back, I had a coaching call with a client, we'll call her Susie, who was telling me that she was feeling very on edge. She was feeling like everything was happening all at once. Her employees were dropping balls. Her house was falling apart. Her cash flow was tight. And she had a to-do list that would just not shorten no matter how many tasks she checked off. Maybe you can relate. She said to me, Kaylee, I wake up in the morning and I am already tired. I feel like I'm on the end of my rope and one small mishap away from completely losing my shit. It's like when you're in that state where you find yourself snapping at everyone around you. You just don't have a lot of patience. You're overwhelmed. You're exhausted. You're already stressing about Monday and it's Friday night. Feels like you don't even have a real weekend. These are all signs that you're flirting with the verge of burnout. And listen, the world around us doesn't make it any easier. We seem to be in a state of perpetual burnout right now between years of a pandemic, inflation, mental health issues, war, vaccines or no vaccines, the school system, hurricanes. I mean, every time you turn on the TV, something else terrible seems to be happening. External circumstances make us believe that we are consumed by stressful situations and that we really don't have control over them. The reality is the world is always going to throw us curveballs that we will need to deal with. And the other reality is that we have so much more control than we believe over how we think and feel in response to these triggers. You actually can take control of your own thought process to become aware of how your feelings are causing stress and then process those feelings in a way that allows you to experience whatever's going on without feeling so exhausted and overwhelmed and powerless. And might I add that your antidote to stress is actually not just take a vacation. Because I've been there and you will just take your stress with you on vacation, right? That would be a waste. Instead, I want to talk with you today about how to recharge and re-stimulate the mental freedom you once had with a tool that you already have access to. Can you guess what it is? That tool is your brain. And I'm going to share some ways I have learned to heal my own stress to prevent burnout, to create more energy, to create more resilience, and to give myself grace for all that I am instead of focusing on what I am lacking. And my wish for you is that you're able to enjoy your life even in stressful circumstances and lean into that fulfillment to prevent burnout from happening. At the end of the day, stress only has power over you when you tell yourself you don't have power over it. And that's the message I worked to reinforce with Susie, and also the reality that I reminded myself of this last week. Susie was complaining that her staff was letting her down, that she had to micromanage their work, that the constant follow-up and poor execution was really the root cause of her stress. But then 1 hour later, she would step in and take over and put herself right back in the same scenario because the discomfort of letting someone fail or allowing a project to take longer than expected, the angst, we've all been there, right? Of watching someone take 10 times the time to figure it out on their own. That brought her greater discomfort than the discomfort of the stress itself. Stress had subconsciously become her comfort zone. I mean, Susie was well fed. She was safe. She had a home and warm clothes. Her human needs were more than met. And when you think of it that way, in fact, many of us here listening to this podcast are living in luxuries. We live in the 21st century and we currently enjoy the greatest personal wealth, the most plentiful food, the most effective medical care, and the longest lifespan in human history. Yet there's a shockingly large percentage of people who are desperately unhappy. And statistics show this is actually on the rise. People are trapped in a condition of overproduction, overwhelm, exhaustion, and an invisible workload that we as women are carrying around in denial. We're getting stressed out by things that are in our head. It feels like the stress is created by the world around us, by circumstances around us. But in reality, there are ways to control how we think and feel in response to these scenarios. Most of these scenarios, by the way, are ones that we're putting on ourselves. We're setting our own deadlines. We are setting our own crazy goals. And then we're stressing ourselves out to hold ourselves accountable to some abstract thing that we made up in our heads. And as I was looking for some support last week, I pulled up an article on managing stress by the National Alliance on Mental Illness. The topic, ways to reduce stress. And here were the coping strategies that were listed. Number 1, accept your needs. Number 2, manage your time. Number 3, practice relaxation. Number 4, exercise daily. Number 5, set aside time for yourself. Number 6, eat well. Number 7, get enough sleep. Number 8, avoid alcohol and drugs. And finally, talk to someone. And these are all great. In fact, I'm pretty sure prior to last week's tornado, I had been fully embracing all of these stress reduction techniques. My problem was I was already stressed and relaxing wasn't solving any problem or alleviating any anxiety that felt crippling, right? As if we as business owners have so much time and space to be able to go through this laundry list of 10 things every day, right? And I think in general, I'm pretty good at all this stuff. But instead, I was already in a place where I just needed to harness my own power within to make change at that moment. And here's what I know as an entrepreneur, whether it's conscious or not, we think we need to do certain things to be deemed worthy as a good boss, a provider, mother, community member, business partner. We are holding the pressures of the success of our business and the people we employ, and we're at times willing to invest our very last ounce of being into ensuring success is imminent. What we need as entrepreneurs is a framework to help us manage our brains, which, by the way, we need that organ to function at a very high capacity in order to make that happen. And so I want to share a simple system that I've created to manage entrepreneurial stress at the onset. And this is a 3-step framework that I call realize, react, and resolve. Okay. This is very basic, but let me tell you, it works wonders. The first step is to realize, and that's where I'm really getting aware, right? We have a lot of things in our head. We want to get it out onto paper. Write down all your feelings. When you believe something, you start looking for more evidence of it. You need to learn to work with your brain and nervous system to become aware of what the emotional burden is for you. I just throw it out there. Here's how I'm feeling. If it's I feel short-tempered. I feel agitated. I feel irritated. I feel nervous. I feel worried. I write those words down. I get it out on paper so it's not just floating around in my head. That way I can start really going through the process of moving into the next step, which is to react, okay? And that's where then I'll list out my stressors. So I'm going to start listing out all the things that are weighing on me, right? Big or small, what's on my mind. Get them out of my head and onto paper, again, to give your brain a break and begin to work through each of these one by one. So that's where I might list out. It could look like a to-do list for you. It could look like a family member being sick. It could look like some other kind of issue or concern that I have in my business or my life. I'm listing all of these out on paper. So far what I'm seeing on my paper is sort of the awareness of my feelings and then a list of the stressors that are potentially causing those feelings. So I'm sort of reverse engineering the stress. Finally, it's time to resolve. So next to each stressor, then I'm going to notate what is in my control and what is not in my control. When Susie did this exercise, she realized that the fact that she needed to allow her employee to complete the project on her own was within her control. What was not in her control was how long it would take that employee the first time around. So what we needed to let go of was the expectation that that specific campaign or project would be completed this quarter. Instead, we would push the expected timeline back to allow for mistakes and corrections. Everyone could take a breath and do their best work, and that employee would learn to do the activity properly so Susie can avoid swooping in to take over yet another project down the road. Then we physically crossed that stress off the list and continued down the lineup of stress points. So you see how tactical this is. We're really digging into each little thing that is like causing this big ball of stress and determining what we can and can't do about that, okay? At the end of the day, managing stress really comes down to recognizing and honoring the conditions for which you need to have in place to thrive. It's not about controlling circumstances or predicting outcomes. Instead, it's about accepting that if we want to feel better, we have to embrace the stressful situations and coach ourselves through the process of showing up to that same situation next time with a different mindset. Just because it doesn't get done doesn't mean you have to be the one to run in, to swoop in Susie style and do it for everybody else, right? It's always a decision. Leader, I encourage you today to take a pause and look at the reality of your life situation. It's most likely not even the work that's stressing you out. It's your perception of the work or your perception of what's left for you after the work is done. But it's not your destiny to be responsible for everything and everyone around you. You are responsible for yourself and your mental health first. And that's part of developing a new identity as a CEO of your business, protecting its leader and making moves that take you out of the trap of entrepreneurial stress and into a place of empowerment and intention. Okay, Goddess, I hope this episode has been so helpful and helps you alleviate stress when it comes along. Be sure to save this episode so you can revisit it when you need it. And if you think someone else could use this message, please share on Instagram and tag us. We so love that. Have an amazing stress-less week, and I will talk with you Monday. Wait, before you go. Hey, if you're vibing with this conversation and you want to join me on my mission to help 100 inspiring and intentional women cross the next $1 million milestone in their business this year, or leader, maybe you want to become one of them, head over to Facebook and join our free community, the Fierce Factor Society. Over there, we're taking this conversation to an elevated level. Get access to resource guides, podcast supplements, guideposts, and direct communication with me, my expert team, and of course, a society of fierce women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetic wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to Facebook and search the Fierce Factor Society. See you there, Goddess.